Would I be correct if I said that all of you in this room today are in the belief business? You believe that the products and services that you provide to your prospects and clients are right for them. You believe that you can help create peace of mind and a safety net if people's plans do not work out the way they had hoped they would. And you provide critically needed dollars, not if they're needed, but when they're needed. But let me ask you a question. Do you think the public also believes the same thing? Do they jump out of bed in the morning and before their feet hit the floor or they think about that first cup of coffee, they go, today's the day. I'm going to get my financial house in order. I cannot wait to talk to an advisor about what happens if I become old, ill, run out of money, or I die. Sadly, they do not. So my intention for being here with you today is to help you to feel comfortable having courageous conversations with your clients and their families, to help them to have the conversations they need to have, and so that you can help them to become true believers in the wonderful, wonderful work that you do. Would I be safe to think that you've also heard over the years the comment that life insurance is for the living? You've probably also heard it said that you're not in this business until you've delivered your first death claim, correct? I joined the life insurance business to try it out for 1 year, and I left 27 years later, never figuring out which year it was supposed to have been. By the way, I started in the business when I was 12 years old. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. A year after I started, I met and fell in love with a very dashing officer in the Canadian Air Force, and then I married him. So what happens when you marry a man in the military? You move. In my first 10 years as an advisor, I set up 4 separate client bases across Canada. The first one was in my hometown of Montreal. The second was in a totally stone-cold market. The third, I knew 5 people. And in the fourth, it was a cold market again. So how do you survive in this business? By starting over and over again so many times. Well, you do a lot of networking, you put yourself out there, you get involved, you talk to a lot of people, and you truly believe in what it is that you do. And I always believed in what I did as an advisor. But something happened along the way that turned me into a disciple. And I would like to share a true story with you today about that conversion. The third market that I set up was in Ottawa, the nation's capital. By that time, I was the mother of a beautiful baby girl named Megan, who I'm thrilled to have here with me at the convention. And we had settled in, she's a little slightly older now. We had settled in, my parents lived close by, life was good. One Friday evening, I was preparing a gourmet dinner for 8 people when my husband walked in the door, undid his tie, and walked straight to the fridge to get a cold beverage. This is not going to be good, I thought. He leaned up against the kitchen counter as casually as he possibly could, and he looked at me and he said, how would you like to move to Winnipeg, Manitoba? And I asked him why, just to help you out here. In Winnipeg, in the winter, the snowdrifts are 6 feet high, and people dig a tunnel from their front door or their garage, and they go to work, and they go to school. So I asked him if we could talk about this a little later, because our guests were arriving soon, and quite frankly, I think I was in a total state of shock. So he said, sure, no problem, we could do that, but there was just one more little thing. His commanding officer was expecting an answer from him 2 days later, before he left for England for 3 weeks. So the next day, with a 2.5-year-old daughter jumping in and out of his suitcase, we made the monumental decision to move again. I will never forget the day he came home and handed me my airline ticket. I read it, and I burst out crying. He took it out of my hand, he looked at it, said, "It's all right, what's the matter?" I said, "It's only one way. What did I do wrong?" So they were only supposed to post us there for 10 months. So I decided to leave the insurance business and become a full-time mother. In their infinite wisdom, they posted us there, and a very persistent man talked me into coming back into the life insurance business. Here we go, client base number 4. So we got ourselves all settled in and whatever, and thankfully they let us stay there. So we created a great circle of friends. We got involved in the community, and my daughter's school life was good. One sunny weekend in July, we all went off to the store because I decided I wanted to paint the fence down the side of our house, so we needed to go and buy some paint. After dinner that evening, we went over and joined one of my husband's colleagues that lived 2 doors over from us, and we had a great evening swimming, laughing, having fun. We made the evening a short one because we all had to get up early the next morning. My daughter was going off for her annual 5-week summer vacation with my parents, and my husband had a commitment the next morning. Dad and daughter spent about an hour the next day in her room, reading, talking, laughing, and having a good time before saying their goodbyes to each other. And I remember her dad saying to her, "I love you, sweetie. I shall miss you. Have a great time. Mind your manners. Be good for your grandparents, and I shall talk to you tonight." She promised him that she would, and then he came into our room, kissed me goodbye, and said he was really looking forward to our date that afternoon. On the way down the stairs, he yelled, "I love you, girls. I'll see you soon." So I took her to the airport, and on the way home, I stopped for breakfast at my favorite coffee shop. And as I was sitting outside, I remember looking at the sky that was as bright and as clear as it could be, and thinking to myself how lucky I was because of the wonderful life that I had. Back home, I tackled painting the fence again, turned the radio up, and was really looking forward to my husband coming home so we could start our date. A little while later, the neighbor we had had the enjoyable evening with the night before came over with his little one to chat. And we lived on a dead-end street. And while we were talking, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a police car come in onto our street, and it went and parked in front of his house. Neither one of us thought much of it because he had had a whole bunch of items stolen out of his garage 2 weeks before. So he went home to talk to the police officer. I turned the radio back up. Life was good, got back to my painting. As I was sitting there, I happened to look up through the fence, and I saw my neighbor, and the police officer walking across the lawn of the 2 houses between our 2 towards me. I stood up. The police officer addressed me by name and asked me if we could go into the house. I said, "No. Where's my husband?" He again asked me if we could go into the house. And again I said, "No. Where is my husband?" I had this insane notion in my head that if I did not let this man into my house, he would not tell me what I feared he was about to tell me. At this point, with tears in his eyes, the police officer took a very deep breath, looked straight at me, and said, "I regret to inform you, your husband was killed in an accident this morning." My husband was only 39 years old. In the blink of an eye, the life that I knew as a wife, mother, and an executive turned into my worst nightmare. And I suddenly became a widow with a 12-and-a-half-year-old daughter and a financial tsunami coming my way. They heard my screams for miles, managed to get me into the house where I collapsed. And I found out later that he was actually killed at 11:30 a.m., but they did not inform me until 1:30 p.m., for they were trying to find a family member to be with me when they delivered the news, but we had no family there. We only had really good friends. And a lot of what happened after that is a blur, but I remember a hushed conversation where they were asking who they could reach out to be with me, and I remember telling them to call my husband's best friend. The four of us were very, very close, and my girlfriend and I had made a pact that if anything ever happened, we would call the other one's husband. He was coming for dinner that night as she was out of town, but I'm sure when he saw our home phone number and picked up the phone, he did not expect to hear the terrible news that he heard. I had to make 3 critical phone calls that day. The first one was to my parents, to ask my parents to tell their beloved granddaughter that her daddy, her hero, was dead. That goes above and beyond grandparenting duties in my book. The second phone call I made that day was to my husband's youngest brother, to ask him to break the news to his parents and to his other brother because I did not have the strength to call them. The third call I made that day was because I needed to ask a very important question to someone that I had a solid trust relationship with. I called my life insurance advisor. I knew everything that went on in our house from a financial perspective. We had had our wills reviewed the year before. We had even purchased more life insurance. But I have never been so terrified in my life. And I needed him to answer one question for me. Will we be all right? He was at my house within 2 hours. And later that evening, I walked out into our sunroom where he was speaking with my husband's best friend. And I told both of them I needed a lawyer, and I needed one fast. And I remember them looking at each other and then looking at me a little bit surprised, for they had just been talking about the fact that I needed a lawyer to settle the estate. They were right. I needed a lawyer to settle the estate. But even through my shock, I knew enough to know that I needed a lawyer because I was in big trouble. You see, my husband was piloting a small plane that malfunctioned and crashed, killing him and 3 other passengers in the plane. In the blink of an eye, 4 families' lives changed forever that day, and 5 children lost a parent in under 60 seconds. Within the first 6 months of his death, I was served with the first 2 lawsuits. Within the 2-year filing period, I was served with the other one. The 3 families sued everybody that stood still that day. It took 10 long years for those lawsuits to be finalized, and unfortunately during that time I was afraid to spend the life insurance money. For if they won the case and I had to pay a big settlement, where in the world was I ever going to get the money from to pay them? Over those 10 years, I shook uncontrollably every time I saw the lawyer who was representing my husband's estate, because I never knew if he was going to tell me everything was okay or I'd be penniless and living in the street. The day I heard the verdict and knew the judgment, I cried so hard from sheer relief that for the next 2 days, I felt like an 18-wheeler truck had run over me. Being in the business, I foolishly thought that with my experience, my CLU designation, all of my expertise, that if anything ever happened to me, I would be able to handle it better than someone else would. Wrong. Without my life insurance advisor, who became my absolute lifeline, I would have been lost. I reached out to him, I leaned on him, and I was in such shock that I could not even decide if I wanted peas or carrots with dinner. Yet there I was, making some of the most monumental financial decisions of my adult lifehood, and I couldn't decide what vegetable I wanted. He took me by the hand. He drove me places I needed to go. He wrote out the checks for me to sign. And he was the only person with his hand out giving me money instead of everybody else out there with their hand out asking me for money. So why am I telling you this story? Why am I sharing such a personal story with you and ripping my heart out again to lay it on my sleeve to bleed? Am I telling you it because I want you to feel sorry for me? Am I the only person that's ever lost someone? No. No. It's because I am your client. And today I'd like to share some important things with you through your client's eyes. So let me anchor back to the reason why I'm here with you today. It's to help you to get the courageous conversations going with your prospects and clients. And your prospects and clients are looking to you to start those courageous conversations with them. Because 9 times out of 10, they cannot have them with themselves. They cannot have them with themselves because it absolutely terrifies them. People do not sit around on the weekend over dinner and discuss what would happen if they became terminally ill or died tonight. They just don't do that. But I'll let you in on a huge secret. Once you get them started, you usually cannot get them to stop. And so many people have said to me that it's as if someone took the weight of the world off their shoulders by helping them to get the conversation started with their loved ones. And I tried 4 times to ask my husband what his final wishes were, and he would never tell me because he flew fast jets, drove fast motorcycles, and thought he was immortal. So when he died, I planned a funeral blindly, hoping I was making the right decisions. You really have to make sure that you know what makes your clients tick, what's important to them, what keeps them up at night, what makes them worry about their loved ones, because it will help you to deepen the trust relationship and really bond with them and keep them as your clients for life. However, you have to be the ones to get the courageous conversations started. No one else out there is ever going to ask them the types of questions that you need to ask. Therefore, you cannot stay at the 35,000-foot level. It's your responsibility to get out of your comfort zone, to peel back the layers of the onion with the type of questions you ask, and to dig down deep. And please make sure that you know the family. The time to meet the other members of someone's family is not when something happens. Believe me, they do not want to meet you for the first time in their hour of need. 70% of women fire their husband's advisor within 3 to 6 months of death. And why do you think they do that? There's no prior relationship. We are about to come into the largest transfer of wealth in the history of humankind. And if you do not want all of your hard-earned business to take a walk to another financial institution after you have delivered a check, I would suggest that you know the adult children and the parents as well as you know your clients, because they are going to have a significant say in what happens with that money. My advisor calls my daughter Jane Jr. He advises her and her spouse on insurance and financial matters, and he knew my parents when my husband died. No one ever asked me what type of life insurance my husband had. They only ever asked if we would be all right. So in closing today, I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts. You truly make a difference in the lives of the people that you serve every day. So when you've had a bad day, and you get up the next morning and you look yourself in the mirror, and you think to yourself, does anybody really care about the work that I do? I'd like you to think of this story. Think of the story I have shared with you, because you really do make a difference in the lives of the families and your clients that you serve. There's so many people out there that have not had the privilege yet to meet you, and they do not know yet how much they will need you one day. Think about this. You have the ability to put more money into a community through the work that you do than some people will ever earn in their entire working lifetime. With the stroke of a pen on an insurance application, you can make sure that if mom or dad does not come home tonight, that family can stay close and be part of their community and not be torn or ripped away from the only home they may have ever known. With the stroke of a pen, you can make sure that if somebody becomes critically ill or disabled, they can do so with dignity. And with the stroke of a pen, you can help people to live out their retirement years in the manner which they would like to. And with the stroke of a pen, you can make sure that if the largest employer becomes disabled or dies tonight, that the employees are not out on the street tomorrow standing in front of the company because the doors are locked, because there's no funded buy-sell agreement or no disability buyout in place. This is the most noble profession in the world for the right person, and that means all of you. And you do such important work, but we, your clients, do not thank you enough for what you do. So on behalf of myself, my daughter, and my husband, and all of the families you serve, and everything you do for your communities, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all you do to take such great care of us. Thank you.